Amwa, who is the Afrobarometer communication coordinator for the region. So I will try and be brief because Dr. Wumi has already introduced you into what Afrobarometer is. I will just add that the goal of Afrobarometer is to give voice to ordinary citizens by providing high and reliable quality data to policymakers, policy advocates, civil society organizations, academics, and the media. To make it simple, people used to believe for a lot of time on this continent that only the political class or the elite should have a say in matters related to governance. But Afrobarometer is trying to beat that opinion, that belief that everyone in his own words should have an opinion about what is going on in our countries. That is what Afrobarometer is doing across the continent. And what Afrobarometer does is that where we operate, we have national partners who are conducting the survey for us. And since 2018, CBRAS has been doing this for us in Gambia. And I want us to join our hands together to thank them, to clap for them for the good job they've been doing so far. It wasn't an easy task from where we started. And also, Afrobarometer, we pride ourselves for our methodology. We use a nationally representative sample. And in that sample, all respondents are randomly selected. And our samples are distributed across regions, states, provinces, and rural urban areas in their proportion to their share in the national population. In our sample, every adult citizen has an equal chance of being selected. We do face-to-face interviews in the language of the respondent choice. What it means is that we don't only conduct surveys where we do operate in the official language of countries, which is English for Gambia or French for Senegal. We do make sure that our questionnaires are translated in the most spoken 4 or 5 local languages to guarantee, as I was saying, that everyone will have a chance to respond to the questionnaire and give his opinions in his own words. So the sample size for Gambia was 1,200 respondents with a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points at 95% confidence level. The survey was conducted in Gambia from August 2022 to September 2022. So if you want much more information or much more detailed information about Afrobarometer, I can encourage you to go to our website and see everything from all the 34 countries where we do conduct surveys. Everything is there with the analysis, the reports, the publications. You can consult them and see the huge work Afrobarometer is doing across the continent. Thank you very much, everyone.
On Afrobarometer and, of course, the methodology they use in carrying out this study, which is quite important for us to have an understanding from the very onset. Because without that understanding, sometimes we find ourselves receiving a lot of questions because of the lack of understanding about the methodology that is generally used by Afrobarometer across all countries in Africa. From a glance, in terms of the study, as you can see on the screen right in front of you, this particular study, of course, looked at different areas. And as far as the dissemination is concerned, we are doing it at different times. And of course, at each of the programs or sessions we have with you, we will look at a particular theme. And as far as today's dissemination is concerned, the theme we are going to look at is elections and governance. And of course, there cannot be any better time than now when, of course, we just have the local government elections right at the corner. And if you can see, that is why, as I, of course, do my presentation, you will see a lot of focus on local government-related matters. Our focus is on councillors, local government-related issues, and so on and so forth. So at a glance from the study, with respect to this particular theme, and also voting system, Gambians feel that we still need to maintain the marble system, because this is very important. There has been debates in terms of changing from the marble to ballot papers. But most Gambians, 60% are saying we should still maintain the system we have. And in terms of accountability, a majority of citizens say it is more important to be able to hold the government accountable, even if that means it makes decisions more slowly, than to have a government that gets things done. They are not only interested in getting things done. Well, the survey for Afrobarometer, there is something that concerns them a lot. That is representation between male and female, right? So as you can see, we've tried our best, although it would have been better to have 50-50, or we have more female respondents than male. But that has been a challenge. But however, we've got 53% male, and of course, for women, we have 47. Component is concerned, most Gambians, which is 80%, support elections as the best way to choose their leaders. I'm sure all of you would agree with me that prior to 2016, it was a different story. People used to say, elections are going to be can, but now we have seen a difference. So the 2016 election that, of course, show a change has, of course, made us to believe that, yes, election is an important tool to change leaders. And the majority of respondents say elections work fairly well or very well to enable voters to remove leaders who don't do what the people want. And that's about 72% believe that, yes, if leaders are not doing what they want, the best way to remove them is through election. And to ensure that National Assembly members reflect voters' view, that's 57%. Also, 1 in every citizen says that they contact their local government councillors at least once during the previous year, that is within the last 12 months. They've been able to contact their local government councillor. Of course, comparing this to previous years, some important problems to give them their views, right? Councillors at least once during the previous year for some important problems. So they are able to, of course, raise their concerns, the problems they face in their community, only one, which is 26%. Almost 6 in 10 Gambians give their local government councillors a negative performance rating. In fact, if you look at this rating, we can see in 2018, when we compare 2018, it was 30%. But today we are talking about 59%, which is almost 200% increase, which means local councillors need to redouble their efforts. You can see the comparison between 2018, 2022, and 2021 and 2022, looking at choose leaders through elections. Well, you can see 88% in 2018 thought that, yes, we can, of course, change our leaders through elections. 2021, it was the same. But in 2022, there is a slight decline. I will leave that also to the panelists to do their analysis when the discussions start. And in terms of use of other methods to choose leaders, we are seeing an increase in that from 11% in 2018 to 17% in 2022. So we are seeing a 6% increase in terms of using other methods to choose leaders. In terms of efficacy of elections, what of course people opine in this country is that election ensures voters' views are reflected. 57% believe fairly well and very well that elections ensure that the views of voters are reflected. Whilst you have 40% thinking that no, the views of voters are not very well or not at all reflected in elections. And in terms of elections enable voters to move or to remove leaders from office, 72% believe in that. And as I said earlier, the 2016 was a good example. Prior to 2016, if you had done this survey, you might find a different story. But because of that, of course, we've seen that people now believe that election is a very good tool to change our leaders. Support for multi-party competition. As you can see, when you look at the results comparatively, from 2018 to 2022, what we have seen is there is a decline in terms of political party divisiveness and many parties needed, right? So you can see the questions that were asked to the respondents, which of the following statements is close to your views? Statement 1, political parties create division and confusion, right? And it is therefore unnecessary to have many political parties in the Gambia. So when you look at this particular one, that is, you can see from 2018, it was 22%. But today it has gone up, which means that the people of the Gambia believe that political parties are divisive, right? So therefore, there is no need for us to have as many as possible. And in terms of many parties needed, which is the second statement, many political parties are needed to make sure that Gambians have real choices in who governs them. We are seeing also a decline in that. And of course, 2018, we saw it was at 75%. But today, it has declined to 57%. Maybe people think that, well, what we are seeing is not anything impressive, having all types of political parties. Support for political power change. Respondents were asked, which of the following statements is close to your view? Statement 1 reads, in a democracy, it is better if power sometimes changes hands in elections from one political party to another. So that means that there should not be only one political party winning all the time, but it's good for a change. So you can see 66% are in support of that. Whilst you have 31% who said it is okay with them if one political party wins all the time, right? And we have 3 who, of course, have a different view. That is, they agree either with none of these sides. They are more neutral or refuse or don't want to answer or they do not know. Change of voting system, just as I said initially, from the very beginning, 60% still believe that we should continue using the marble system, not changing to a paper ballot. And this, no doubt, knowing the level of literacy in this country, I think that must have been one of the reasons why we are seeing this result. And also you can see 35% disagree. They agree strongly that there should be a change from marble to paper ballot. And we have 3% who, of course, neither agree nor disagree. So you can see we've further gone down to look at change voting system based on demographics. And as you can see, between men and women in this country, it's similar views. 60% believe that we should maintain the marble system, not the paper ballot. In terms of rural and urban, you can see 69% of rural people believe that we definitely should maintain the marble system instead of moving to paper ballot, which also, if you look at the level of education between rural and urban, you will definitely know that, well, this is not surprising. And in terms of age, you can see much more older people, that is 56 years and above, 69% of them think that we should maintain the old system, that is marble, right? And you look at education, which is also non-formal education. Those with that, 65% of them believe that we should definitely maintain it. And those with postgraduate or post-secondary education, you can see that is the least category of people who think we should maintain the marble system. They feel that we should move to paper ballot, which also is not in any way surprising. All right, trust in the Electoral Commission. An interesting finding. You can see 36% feel that they have no trust in the electoral system at all, Electoral Commission at all. And 22%, they have just a little. 10% somewhat, and 30% a lot. So this is a very interesting finding, I'm sure. Probably as a result of the last election, there was a lot of noise in the country that could have changed this. Because if you look at the 2018 one, where we'll certainly see, right? Trust the Electoral Commission somewhat or a lot. You can see 2018, about 64% had trust in the electoral system or somewhat had trust in the electoral system, a lot and somewhat. In 2021, it declined to 49%. And in 2022, it further declined to 40%. Accountability or accountable governance and efficient governance. We've looked at this also, and we've done a comparison between 2018 to 2022. And if you look at it, for accountable governance, which of course we said the questions the statements were, it is more important to have a government that can get things done, even if we have no influence over what it does. That's the first statement. And the second statement is, it is more important for citizens to be able to hold government accountable, even if that means it makes decisions more slowly. I mean, I have talked about this earlier. So you can see from 2018, it was 76, but it has declined to 67%. And the first one, which it is more important to have a government that can get things done. Those are the people who are just interested in doing things done, even if we have no influence. You can see that has also increased from 21% to 31%. Is government the people's employee or boss? Another quite interesting finding. You can see for a situation where it is considered as people should respect the government and do what it directs, which means serving as the boss. When you look at both agree and agree very strongly, you can see the numbers are, if you put them together, it's only 15% that have the feeling that government should be seen as boss. When you look at the ones who think that government should be seen as our employees, government should be seen as our employees. When you look at the ones who agree and the ones who agree very strongly, you can see 61% agree very strongly that our governments are our employees, whilst of course 17 believe that, agree that our government is our employee. So therefore, when you put these two together, you will see that majority of Gambians believe that our government is our employee, not our boss. And of course, we should treat them like that. Demand for representation of elected officials. Elected officials should listen to voters' views and do what they demand. As you can see, that is also high. We are talking about 85% agree very strongly that elected officials should, of course, listen to voters' views and, of course, do what they demand. And elected leaders should follow their own ideas. Only 13% think this way. But we have an opportunity. If we feel that they are not doing what they are supposed to do, I think the best thing is to do the right thing. And the right thing, of course, we all agree is what? Change through elections. Contact with local government councillor. This is a very important finding as well. As is shown on the diagram, 73%. The question was this. During the past year, how often have you contacted any of the following persons about some important problem or to give them your views? A local government councillor. 73% said never. They have never had any contact, of course, share their views, of course, with their local council or councillor. And only 6% said they did it once. And 9% said they often. That is very small. Do local government councillors listen? This is another important question as far as the local government elections that is coming. How much of the time do you think the following try their best to listen to what people like you have to say? That's local government councillors. You can see 39% said never. Local government councillors do not listen to them. Only sometimes, 35%. Often and always, only 23% said this. And of course, 3% have no idea. The next item is, can you make your local government council listen? 18% believe that not very likely. And you have 39%, right? That is saying not at all likely. Means the possibility is very limited. And 16% somewhat likely, and 24% very likely. Approval of leaders' performance. This is another very interesting thing. In fact, if you look at the trend, you would realize that the president seemed to have the lowest approval rating. The question we asked them was, do you approve or disapprove of the way that the following people have performed their jobs over the past 12 months? Or haven't you had enough about them to say? For traditional leaders, 58% approve the way they have done, approve or strongly approve that they have performed in the right way, whilst 38% disapprove. And for National Assembly reps, 38% approve or strongly approve that they have performed in the right way. And for local government councillor, 36%. And for president, 34%. Evaluation of local government council performance. We asked this question, do you approve or disapprove of the way that the following people have performed their jobs over the past 12 months, or haven't you had enough about them? All right? So this is looking at the trend, 2018, 2021, and 2022. You can see there's a decline in the performance rating in terms of approve or strongly approve, right? Which is 2018, it was 58. So it declined to 36% 2022. And of course, there is an increase in disapproval or strongly disapprove, or if you want to call it disapproval, right? Disapprove or strongly disapprove, that has increased from 30% in 2018, 44% in 2021, and in 2022, 59%, which, as I said earlier, is almost a 200% increase. Trust in local government council. This is also a very important one. You can see respondents were asked, how much do you trust each of the following? Haven't you had enough about them to say? Your local government councillor. As you can see, 33% said they have no trust at all for their local government councillor. And 28% said just a little. And 12% said somewhat. But 24% said a lot of trust in them. In terms of the trend between 2018 and 2022, we've seen a sharp decline from 57% in 2018 to 36% in 2022. Corruption among local government councillors. The respondents were asked, how many of the following people do you think are involved in corruption? Or haven't you heard enough about them to say? Local government councillors are the ones we are looking at. 7% said none, which means they think that they are not corrupt. And you have 52% that is saying some of them. And 23% believe that most of them are corrupt. And we have 8% who are not sure or they have not heard about it. Most or all local government councillors perceived as corrupt. You can see the trend. In 2018, it was just 19%. But today, that's last year, 2022, it had increased from 19 to 33% of people thinking that all or most or all local government councillors are perceived to be corrupt. Right to information. With this particular question, respondents were asked, for each of the following, please tell me whether ordinary citizens and news media should have the right to obtain this information from government or whether government should be allowed to keep the information away from the public. Make local government budgets public. 92% feel that or opine that they should be made public. Make local government bids and contracts public. We have 89% saying that. And make salaries of local government officials and teachers public. 62% believe that they should be made public. Access to information. We asked respondents, how likely is it that you could get the following information from government or the public institutions, or haven't you had enough to say? Local government contracts. As you can see, not very or not at all likely, 75% feel that getting information or having access to this information is not very likely. This is huge, huh? And also for local government development plan and budget, 74% think that it is not very likely or not at all likely that citizens can have access. School budgets, we are seeing 70% thinking that yes, it's not likely to have access to it, which of course I think it's not a good story, where people having access to documents that are supposed to be made public, people feel that it's not likely. That means the accountability we are talking about, there are still a lot of challenges with it. Likelihood of responses, in terms of this question, how likely is it that you could get someone to take action? If you went to a local government office or anti-corruption authority to report corruption about corrupt behavior, like misuse of funds or request for bids, right? So you can see 67% believe that not very or not at all likely that any action would be taken if you go to report about corruption. Then request assistance from local government office. If you went to a local leader or a local government office to request assistance for a development project in your community, like an approved water supply or community cleanup activity, the likelihood of having that support, 65% of the citizens feel that it is not very likely or not likely at all. And reporting teacher misconduct at schools, 45% opine that, of course, action will be taken. We now come to the conclusion of course, this particular component of the study or of the survey. We were able to, of course, conclude that Gambians believe elections are still the best way to choose leaders, despite a drop, right, in terms of what obtained in 2018 and what obtained in 2022. And that elections work to help remove leaders who do not do what people want and to ensure National Assembly members reflect their votes. Yes, and also a majority of Gambians say the current marble voting system should be maintained. And it's about 4 in 10 Gambians say local government councillors never listen, while 23 say they do listen, often or always. And finally, assessment of local government councillors' performance have declined sharply, looking at the trend between 2018 and 2022. On that note, this brings me to the end of the presentation, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Understanding of what has been presented. So to that end, I'm going to be calling on Madam Fatu Jansengo of independent expert, human rights and governance to come. She is going to be moderating the next session with her team. So she's coming to call her team members out, and we all going to listen to them, and I'm sure they'll throw more light on what has been presented, and we're going to get a better
ups and downs. But what is important is where the citizens stand, and this data show us that Gambians believe in elections and believe in their voices, and I think that is critical. For me, I think that's a big takeaway that we need to always take into account, especially policymakers should take into account and not take for granted citizens, because they believe that they need information, they have the right to information, and they know the power of their vote. So I would like to call on the presenters to come forward and share their perspective on what has been discussed. I think we have about 4 discussants. Dr. Amidou Jawara, quite present in the landscape from public policies to civil society, so his perspective will be very important. Mariama Danso, who's leading important efforts to fight disinformation, and she's the co-founder of Fact Check Gambia. Yusufa Bojang, the program manager of NCCA, important partner also in this process. You're welcome. And Yankuba Manjang, coordinator, Election Watch Committee. I know a few years ago, it was very difficult in the Gambia to collect data. Citizens were afraid, as we all know. I don't know if Said Matijau is around. I remember, I think everybody knew what happened to him when he was trying to engage in research and data collection in the community. And why is it that? Because the then government, and I think most governments, they know the powers of citizens, the power of information. And that is why sometimes they don't want citizens to have a voice. They don't want citizens to express their views. That is why sometimes you have these difficult restrictions that we see in most places. But as I said, we've changed. Gambia has changed significantly after 2018, and citizens are taking it, upon themselves to express themselves through our platforms, and also to show to their government that their voice should count. What the research has shown, though, is that yes, we have a voice, but are we heard? we heard across the board, from central government to local government, our citizen voice is heard. Our citizen voice is heard in policy making and policy formulation. And I think these are the things also that we would like to go into from what the data says and to listen to the experts. I'll start with Mariama, just to hear her perspective, looking at access to information, but also importantly, disinformation in terms of understanding what has been happening with the reality, especially when you guys do fact checking in terms of government activity and citizen perception. What is your take, as a practitioner and looking at the data?
In their right to access information, because they don't think that they will be given answers to some of the questions that they will ask with their right to access information. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of those areas. And at some point, if citizens are denied the right to have access to information, they take anything that they see on the sideline, and as a result, that is what causes disinformation. So it becomes a problem because communication is breached between the citizen and the central government. So any information that they come across on any platform, they take it hook, line, and sinker because they're not getting the information from the right people. They're not getting the information from the right sources because they don't feel that they will be given the information when they ask. So trust is an issue here. You don't trust your system to provide you with the information. So anything you see on the sideline, you take it, and as a result, we are faced with disinformation and misinformation. We have to fight to combat it, but at our own level in the civil society, we cannot do it alone. This is a cause for concern and it's alarming. The government has to look into it seriously. Citizens should be provided with information. They know that it is their right to be provided with such information, but are they being provided with the information? And as a result, they take anything that they see on the sidelines to take it as information, which actually is not information that should be taken.
Months, there will be a mechanism. Looking at that, do you think that could really mitigate some of the challenges you're facing? And the other leg of the question is that you've been doing quite a lot of fact checking. And I think recently there was one that was quite important in relation to this conflict in local government, and it's quite linked to the topic today. What have been the major misinformation areas that you've noticed over the past few years, and compared to what we're talking about today? Because I know that you've done about a dozen since the inception of your organization. What are the trends?
It's one thing to provide a law, and it's another thing to implement the law and get the law rolling. So we've been provided with an access to information bill. A committee should be set up to set it rolling. But there has been a tussle ongoing to set up that committee to get it rolling. And at some point, we are at a standstill with the bill. Yes, we are provided with the bill, but we cannot take the bill hook, line, and sinker when we are not provided with a commission to set the bill started. So that's a hinge on one part, and I believe with the setting up of that commission, things would change. I cannot say it would change 100% for sure, but at least it would be an improvement on the better side for our development. Another thing also is that with trend, especially when it's elections, we see so many misinformation and disinformation. And as a result, it becomes a red line for us because it can cause so many things. It can result to hate speech, which is a threat to our peace and security, of course. So recently, we concluded a fact check on a misleading statement that was in a press release from a government agency. On our own point of view, from where we work in, the government agencies are there for the better interest of every Gambian, not just one political party, one. Two, we have a right as Gambians, not just from Fact Check Center, to be provided with accurate information. So not just any form of information. In terms of elections, we are in election times. And an incumbent government cannot use one of its government agencies as a catapult to provide the citizens with a misleading information in order to sway the perception of voters to its side. That is a serious cause for concern on our own part. Because we believe that as a government, although as a civil society organization, this information should be a threat to all of us as concerned citizens towards maintaining the peace and security of this country. So if we are seeing these informations that are being catapulted by a government agency, it is a cause for concern, one. Two, if it comes from political agents, or it comes from political parties, or it comes from councillors that are still trying to vie for their positions, we would understand that they are politicians, and politicians are meant to do whatever they can in order to sway people's views towards them and vote for them. As a result, we are advocating that any information that we are putting out there, it should be right, it should be true. But then, if it is coming from a government agency, that is a cause for concern on one part. Two, as a politician, you are there to lead the people. You want to be there for the people. So you're supposed to ensure that whatever you are telling the people, it should be what you can defend. It should be what you can stand by. That is on the part of the politician. But on the part of the government, we are not expecting what we are seeing.
Thank you. So what we're seeing is disinformation from different parts of the spectrum. I don't know, obviously, when it comes from a public institution, it's concerning. But I believe it's concerning when it comes to all institutions, including local government as well, because they are all...
Regards to corruptions and the fact that trust, there's been a decline in trust across different agencies of the government, for example, at the local government, at the IEC, and even at various parts. I think one of the major reasons some of those things happen is when there's been some deficiencies when it comes to issues of transparency and accountability. And I will just piggyback on what Mariama has said with regards to access to information. And I think one of the major objectives of access to information is to enable people to have the right to know. And the right to know will also enable, which is actually a basic fundamental right, human right, will also enable, will also facilitate the issue of transparency and accountability. And the fact that a lot of citizens are not getting information or enough information with regards to how their government spend their fund. And even if they do that, particularly also in relation to what has been happening, for example, with the Auditor General's audit reports from various government institutions indicating that there has been a lot of monies that are not being accounted for. And then that could also contribute to people not having enough trust towards the government and the institution. The anti-corruption law bill that is in the National Assembly, that's also an indication of also, for example, the commitment of the various government institutions in addressing issues of corruption in the country. The bill has been in the parliament for the past 3 years. And I guess citizens are right to have mistrust when they did not see enough commitment from both the legislature and the executive in ensuring that this bill is passed and constituting a commission that will be able to look into the issue of corruption as initiated, has been, spoken about in different government agencies. Also the lack of trust in the local government councils. This has to come closer. Good. So also the lack of trust within the local government council, of course. Yeah, there are some indicators of unaccounted fund from also the Auditor General's report, and then also a commission being set up. Was it necessary? This could have been maybe averted if we had an anti-corruption law earlier on, and a commission has been identified to be handling this. So that could easily have been handled by the commission. And all the other issues from different agencies, from the government, from the central government, from the office of the president. Issues of corruption have been reported, or issues of unaccounted money have been reported from the Auditor General report from various government institutions. So it was not going to be setting up commission for one and leaving the other, but the Anti-Corruption Commission could have been able to, holistically look at issues of corruption and issues of mismanagement of funds from different various government agencies. So also one of the major concerns here also, I think we have the anti-corruption law enacted in, I think, August 2021, and until today, we have not seen the commitment to establish the commission. Of course, a grace period of 1 year, 8 months was given to enable the government to prepare and set up the commission, create the necessary institution and structure to facilitate the easily documentation and proactive disclosure of information. And one of the major reasons, what is a leading factor in disinformation or misinformation, is the limited proactive disclosure of information from the government. And the fact that people don't easily get information or accurate information from the right sources that they're supposed to get, it is easy also for information to be, kind of created and passed on. But also, if the institutions that are also supposed to give information are not given the adequate information or are given half information, it also gives room for more kind of disinformation and information to be created. And that could also lead to the lack of trust to the government institution. For instance, I can understand, for example, from 2018, the decline in trust from 59 to 30%, for example, in the local government council. If you look at it, these are the government that are closest to the people, and maybe their performance is what government people tend to pay too much attention to. But it's all worrying when people say they don't have a trust at all that their local government councillors will listen to them. And I think one of the reasons why this is happening is because the decentralization structures put in place to a greater extent are not efficient enough to ensure people get information. For instance, you have the Village Development Committee and the Ward Development Committee. The Ward Development Committee is a structure under the local government council where each ward development committee is chaired by the councillor of the ward. So supposedly these councillors are able to go back to this different ward and give information to the people they represent, because the ward development committee is composed by representatives from different village development committee. So essentially, when this is done, and then the village development committee also, disseminate the information, then you will have a bottom-up approach of first identifying the key problem what are in the communities, and secondly, identifying what are the solutions to those problems, and then the information can go back to the people when those things are decided. I could remember we have series of engagement at my time as activist with local government council, but you will even come to realize some of the councillors do not even understand the estimated revenue for their council, how much is their budget, what is allocated for what, and what is not allocated for the other. And even when it comes to the issue of 60%, 40% distribution of wealth, for example, plowing back 60% of the revenue that they collected to the community, some of these councillors do not have enough information about that. So if a councillor doesn't have enough information as to what is happening at the council about their budget, what are they going to give to the people, or what information are they going to provide to the people that they represent? And the fact that they can provide that information, that could also mean the people will trust them less. Because when they ask for information and they can't hear from you, you're not holding your ward development committee meetings. Even if they're doing things and they're not aware of it, then the chances of them saying you're not doing is high, and chances of them not having enough trust in you is high. So I think the lack of and the deficiency in communication, engagement and involvement in people with what is happening at the government, at both local and central government level, that lack of engagement has also transmitted in the lack of trust to various sectors of the society.
Thank you very much, Alali. I think this is a good transition to go to Yusuf Abuja from the National Center for Education, talking about lack of information and the fact that some of these processes.
Gambian politics, you are a regular observer, you are an actor, and you realize that the findings that are presented here are actually a true reflection of what exists on the ground. It is not a mere academic exercise. Sometimes people may want to insinuate. Remember when the release was done, the opinion poll ahead of the presidential elections, some rejoiced, they celebrated because it went in their favor. The projections were in their favor. But there are others that criticize, caricature the whole process because they feel somehow. And that makes them to lose the bigger picture. And for me, by then, the bigger picture was there is one thing that the polls projected and that they were pointing at. That was
there is a 40% undecided votes. So an actor, a politician, a wise one would have been focusing on that 40% undecided, because all those that were projected then that they are going to win, none was given 40%. So meaning anybody who was able to get that 40%, you are likely to win. But unfortunately, that was not the focus. And for us as civic educators, that was our focus. That research helped us a lot to look at that 40%. They are undecided. Likely, they may be dissatisfied, and in fact, maybe if boycott the whole election. If they do, what will happen? That can cause voter apathy. So that is our focus, and we try to put more effort on that. And again, we look at what areas are these people residing. The research also show that they are residing in the urban areas. These are the elites, probably, that are at least have access to information. So maybe there is something that they are not satisfied with. So I think the research is very important, like you said in your intro, that it helps in terms of policy formulation, it helps in terms of development. And going through all the presentations, what we saw here actually, we saw consistent decline in everything. From the 2018, what was shown and what is shown now, we've seen a decline in every aspect from the start. Of course, looking at the start, the first one is whether Gambians have trust in the elections. Yes, there is trust, but there is a decline from somewhere around 88 coming down to 81. But the confidence is that the election is something that we need. And of course, I think for me, I think what informed this decision again is Gambians were able to at least have a taste of all ways of getting to leadership. Somehow, we were able to see a change of leadership through a coup. We were able to also live through a change of leadership through democratic process. But also, somehow, we have an experience of what might not necessarily be a monarchy, but at least a resemblance. Like our traditional authorities, they are lifetime leaders. So at least we have an opportunity to live through all this. And at the end, I think Gambians were able to have a taste of all this, make an evaluation, and eventually agree that yes, the democratic process is the best way. And that is why we get that 81% still there. So the confidence is there. And again, perhaps also, if you look at the work that different actors are doing, not only NCCE, but civic education is broad, and you have everybody playing a part, the media, the civil society, and every actor. I think we all have a role in trying to change mindset. If you look at the findings that are shown here, where the question was asking whether leaders should be accountable to the people, whether leaders are our servants or they are we should be worshiping them, in so to say. But the answer we get there in the findings actually shows that people actually are aware that leaders are our servants, so we are their bosses and they should be serving us. So all that shows that at least Gambians are developing some critical thinking and critical understanding of the role of their elected officials. So I think the results, like I said actually earlier, I'm very much excited with what was shown here. But again, it shows that this is actually what is happening. If you are in the field, you will not be surprised of what we saw. And also, we're looking at the change of leadership through election, whether election actually can change leaders. And the answer was yes. Of course, if you look at the 2 decades of Jammeh rule, somehow, at some point, that confidence declined to the lowest. But this has been at least reignited. It has changed. When there was that dramatic change in 2016, people then believed that, okay, on the whole, we can change leadership. It doesn't stop there. 2016, we changed the president. Then came to 2017 rather, councils should be very close to the people. And that is why it says councils are closer to the people than the central government, the decentralized position policy. When councils are formulating even their budgets, the acts provide that councils should embark on consultations at the grassroots level. From there, it goes to at the council level. But when the draft is finalized, it should go back again up to the village level. Is it happening? Then the issue of lack of information also is coming into play. So because information was not coming.
Just follow up to that.
Okay.
You mentioned all the things that are needed. As a National Council for Civic Education, is there any role you play? I know in the past it was very difficult to, be openly engaged in critical issues, but now that change happened, is it a dynamic from your institution, or are you able also to further the public right to information by pushing this information to the public, but also educating citizens to know their rights about all these processes and how they can engage in these policies? Do you have programs? Do you have the means and the manpower necessary to engage in this? Because your institution is critical in this change. Like quickly, and then after I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, NCCE since establishment in 1998 has been doing the mandate that it is tasked to do, but as you highlighted, challenges are inevitable, challenges are always there. But despite the challenges, we try to maneuver and do what we can do within our means. And of course, since the change, as you said, in this new dispensation, NCC have done remarkably well in terms of reaching out to the citizens across the spectrum. And more especially the grassroots, our engagements are very much in the grassroots. All these communities that we're talking about here. Here, with the focus, the local government election, with the focus is the local communities. NCC have engaged them extremely well, from the VDCs coming down to the chiefs, going to the ward development committees, to council itself. NCC have done a lot of engagement in that aspect, helping citizens to be able to understand what is their responsibility as right holders, and also the duty bearers, also what is expected of them as duty bearers. And of course, if you engage some of these duty bearers, you tend to understand that in terms of knowledge, in terms of understanding about their roles, it's limited. The Act is there and all other enabling documents are there, but how many of them actually have the opportunity to understand what is there? But also, how much of them are ready to actually fulfill that? How many of them report back to those communities? Those are the challenges that are there. And most of the time, you go to these communities, start trying to engage them in terms of assessing the performance or their interactions, their engagement with their representatives, you always realize that there is always a gap in that aspect. And the very reason why I said the finding is not a surprise for us, because these are things that we always repeatedly get from feedback from the communities anytime we engage them.
And comforting is that Gambians, 81% still supports election is the best way to change any administration, which is really comforting as an observer group. Moving forward with the findings and the question raised. First, with the voting system. With election process system. However, there is another side of the whole story. We've seen in the recent past, IEC most especially, coming forward to say the only way to change is through the paper ballot, and that's the only way to go. From our end, our argument is, why fix a system that is not broken? We've seen our marble working for us. And if we can use the presidential and the parliamentary election as a benchmark to say the marble is still effective, look at the number of invalid votes in the Gambia. It's almost non-existent. Almost every individual that decides to go to the polling center, your vote is counted. You vote for somebody, and it will be registered. Away from that, we've seen, as per the polling centers, IEC's requirement is that we need to vote from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. However, during the presidential, we have seen incidents of some centers voting all the way to 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. at night, and these centers have been, the number of voters in those centers is not more than 800 to 1,200. And with all this, as simple as the marble is, we having this number of hours in some of these voting centers. What happens if you're supposed to turn to paper ballots? Have we done enough consultation, enough education, where the NCCE will come in to look at, are the citizens really aware of it? But away from the national level, if I can use the University of the Gambia as a benchmark, that the last election, interestingly, I'm still a student of the university. So the last presidential election, the president is around. We've seen the number of invalid votes from the university. If that should be translated in the national level, are we not going to have more invalid votes than actually the number of votes that are going to be casted for? So these are all pros and cons that we'll have to look at, and the discussion will have to continue to see which pattern are we going for if possibly diaspora is to vote. But again, it will require us to sit as a country and have a dialogue discussion onto that part and be able to move on. And from the voting system, before moving to the political parties, if I may just talk a little bit on the trust in the Electoral Commission, which we have seen a serious decline in from 2018 to 2022. The number of people that lost trust in the whole IEC. This again, if I can borrow the Wolof saying that Relo amud nyaka watan mo am. The IEC we have seen over the years, most especially on election day, people want information, is not available. IEC is not communicating to the people. The presidential elections, for example, many people rush onto the Gambia Participates Marble app until it gets crashed at some point because of the number of people that we are going there. Because IEC wasn't forthcoming with information that the citizens are in need of at the time. We are not, from our perspective, not asking the IEC to tell us everything as it is ongoing, but as a best practice, at least talk to the people in hourly or at least every 2 hours. Let the chairman come on national TV, tell us something as the process is ongoing. Just like the observer groups will give the midday statement and sometimes at the preliminary statements, at least to keep people up to speed of what is happening. It doesn't have to be the everything that is happening, but at least people are informed of the whole process. Going to the political parties, I'm not surprised with the finding, most especially with the divisive statements that has been issued over the years, with an increment from 22% to 41%. Again, we've seen 18 to 21 political parties registered by the IEC, all coming to contest for the same small ground. Some parties will come with agendas and manifestos and the likes and be able to sell it out. But majority of the parties that we have seen over the years, most especially during the 2021 presidential election and even at the parliamentary election, if candidates want to sell out to the voters, if you don't have much to say to the voters and you are given that 45 to 1 hour to talk to the voters, you are going to say, possibly counter your opponents with information that is not very accurate, or countering possibly a whole political platform, attacking on individuals and personalities, and this goes a long way. And this we have seen happening in the presidential, we have seen the occurrence in the parliamentary, and we are looking forward to see more of that in the local government, because it's still going to be a very tough battleground for all the political parties trying to get their councillors in place. So with the high number of political parties we have, it's only going to increase onto the high number of divisive statements that are going to be issued out. Most especially, I would say, with our problematic part of the Gambia, that is the Badibunkas. They run out of ideas. The first thing they do, they use the Sukutarian style, and that is to attack and get their ideas to be passed on. So this, for me, is one area that is interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Again, conducting a very successful Afrobarometer survey, particularly the team, that were leading the survey from Cyprus, which is, Dr. Lang, Sid Murty, and the others. All right. Congratulations to all of you. I think what brought us here, it's really your hard work that you have done over the couple of months, which is like the ED, our executive director, has said. It's within the core values of Cyprus that whatever we do it in a manner that it will make a difference and also contribute significantly towards the development of this country. So in terms of the survey, in general. I think, like you said, we have been doing the surveys, for quite some time now, and even in presenting the results, the authors have tried as much as possible to try to compare some of the results, across different waves of the Afrobarometer survey, and that was able to actually bring out some of the trends in terms of some of the indicators to really give us a better picture, for some of those indicators regarding how the past can be compared to what we are seeing currently. So in terms of governance versus doing things, accountability versus governance, right? Or maybe even accountability versus doing things well. There is something in the data, I think, that is also quite interesting, because if you look at it in general, we have that people still think that governance it's important, right? In fact, their perception on that actually outweighs their perception on the idea that what is important is just to get things done. All right, so there is a far more higher proportion of people that thinks that government is important. Governance is important than those that think that what is important is really to get things done. And we're seeing a little change in the trend in terms of that indicator. While perception on governance it's declining, over the 3 waves, we see that the perception that getting things done it's more important. It's sort of increasing, right? So if you try to put that into context, it might point that people seem to have less trust, in the governance system, which includes, of course, issues of accountability and things like that, and therefore, their perception really is, what is important is just for us to have somebody, in charge of governance that just gets things done. It doesn't matter how they do it. But of course, we know, having a very sound, governance system is quite important, right? I mean, accountability issues are equally very important because these are basic tenets of, any democratic system, right? So I see you. The time it's a bit running, so I can move quickly into the second question that you asked, right? Which is, we're collecting data, we're analyzing this data, we're reporting on the data, but how far is this data taken, by policymakers, and also making difference in terms of policy, right? So far, we have not been able to really pin down on, what is the specific impact, of these opinion polls or these surveys in terms of policy making. But if we look at the reactions, that comes after, the findings of this surveys or opinion polls are revealed, it seems to suggest that the policymakers or authorities are really aware that it is important to take people's opinion into whatever decision that they are making. All right. And what is interesting about this is, if you look at the National Assembly elections in 2022, right? Boyang, did indicate that the turnover in the National Assembly was quite high. Okay, and you look at that versus the fact that a lot of people from the survey were saying that it is important for their views to be reflected in the decisions that the National Assembly makers make. So to some extent, really, what that tries to show, at least for me, is that people now are aware that they are the ones that have put these National Assembly members there, and they should be there for their interests, right? And when they fail to do that, they punish them in elections. Okay, we've clearly seen that in the National Assembly elections, right? Those people, whose maybe, or those National Assembly members whose voting patterns were out of touch with the realities that their people faced in their communities, right? When they came back to them to try to make a case that they can be, re-elected, they were never listened to, all right? So those people sort of punish them for their dishonest or for their dishonest behavior. Right? So I think the Gambia, these things are just becoming popular nowadays. Okay, and I expect that over time. As we have more opinion polls being conducted, and those opinion polls having impact on, the decisions that people make, right? It would also have significant impacts in terms of policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we got the press and their partner Afrobarometer, because data is critical in development, it's critical in policy making, but you have to get it right. Otherwise, also your credibility could be at stake. So the fact that we can be assured, and we've seen it over time, that Afrobarometer's work is robust and it's well respected. And I think that is quite important for us to rely on the data to improve public policy. From the discussions and the research, we've seen clearly that citizens in the Gambia have changed. They know their rights. They know also what they want. They want a consolidated democracy. They know the importance of freedom of expression and access to information. It is also clear from the research that they are concerned about the lack of accountability of their leaders, and also the overall, issues of corruption. What we are seeing also that, yes, it is reflected in the reality because there are no mechanisms. We have a law on access to information, it's not yet implemented, so hence the gap. So, yes, citizens know it is important to have information, but they cannot exercise that right yet. They are concerned about corruption, but the law and the mechanisms to protect whistleblowers, to also ensure that we combat corruptions are not yet there, even though processes are we are in these processes for the past 5 years, and we are hoping that an access to an anti-corruption law will be passed, and effective implementation of the access to information also will be a reality. Obviously, it was supposed to be 18 months. I think we want to also note and ask if the stakeholders are, holding their leaders accountable. 18 months. Is it budgeted? We need to know. That is why information is critical. Is it budgeted? We had the budget already. Have we scrutinized to know that this year the Access to Information Commission will be set up? Because if it is not in the budget, it is unlikely that, the deadline that was proposed by the law will be met. Really to thank the organizers, and I believe, as I said, data is critical. On the African continent, that is the major challenge, that we don't have enough data to propel development, to inform public policies, to improve public policy, but also importantly, to create the trusted relationship between citizens and those who are governing them. So it is critical that we continue this conversation, improve the methodologies, improve also the possibilities of having more data in different sectors to further inform and improve public policies. When I was discussing with SAIT and some of the partners, I noticed that gender has been part of the discussion, but it was not highlighted enough, as you know. So I believe also this is something that we need to look into. When we talk about governance, we generally tend to say, oh, gender is part of it, but it needs also to be highlighted in a way that we see, because governance without an important part of society is also not governance. So I believe that when we talk about local government, when we talk about those who participated in the survey, we also want to know what is the perception of citizens in terms of those who are representing. Are they inclusive? Are they representative of all stakeholders? I think this is a challenge that I wanted to throw to the research, to CPRES and Afrobarometer. I know they've done quite a lot in these different areas, but I think when we talk about local government also, we need to know, especially in the Gambia, where we all know representation is a big, big challenge, especially representation of women. I thank you very much for your kind attention, and I want to thank the panelists for their insight and also for taking time really to look into the data and give their perception and their perspective. Thank you very much.